100.7 The Bay, joined on the phone. He'll be playing Powerplant live here in Baltimore on October 12th, along with Marcy Playground and Jimmie's Chicken Shack. Everclear frontman Art Alexakis. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm very excited to be speaking with you. You founded Everclear in 1992, so obviously alternative music in the 90s was very much already exploding at that time, but your brand of alternative music, I would argue, is still very much different than the rest of what was coming out around that time. So I'm curious if there was any pressure from like record labels or anybody else at that point to kind of fit into the mold, so to speak, of like a Nirvana or Pearl Jam or any of those other bands that were blowing up around that time, or did everyone just kind of trust your vision for the band?
Well, that's a really good question. In 92 when I started the band, I had moved from San Francisco to Portland because my girlfriend, soon to be my second wife, was pregnant with my eldest daughter and our first baby, our only baby. And we were poor. We were on welfare just to pay for the baby. And I knew I was 30. I was turning 30 that year in April in 92, and I just knew it was going to be my last band, right? I've been doing this since I was 16 because 30 back then was old, right?
Right.
And so I know, I'm 62 now. But I put everything I had into it. We made a record that was a demo for $400, and that became our first record, World of Noise. Things just kind of fell into place, but only because I was just driven, man. I just drove the guys in my band and, in nervous breakdowns almost, because this was it for me.
Right.
And it was my dream I wanted to be a musician. I didn't care about being a rock star. I wanted to have a house, kids, middle-class life, because I grew up in a housing project. So middle class for me was like 3 rungs up, So that's where I was coming from. And I just do what I still do. When I focus on something, I just put the blinders on and I go after what I want to get. It's good, and it served me well through the years, but I wish I had savored things more, In hindsight, I wish I had taken time to really enjoy, like, getting our first gold record and platinum record and playing in front of Woodstock in front of 350,000 people singing Santa Monica. I go back and watch that stuff now, and I'm like, that was pretty cool.
It's super interesting. You talk about kind of feeling retrospective, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was in 2011 when you released Return to Santa Monica. I'm very interested to talk to you about that because it was a lot of recording like new versions of your classic hits, which is funny to me because now so many artists are doing similar things to that, and you were kind of one of the first, at least in my recollection, to do something like that. Obviously, your Taylor Swifts of the world are re-recording their old stuff, and there's a Maryland band, All Time Low, that recently re-recorded a lot of their old material. And like I said, you kind of did that very early on. What was that experience like for you to kind of revisit those songs from back in the day where maybe you weren't appreciating it as much at that time?
Well, to be honest with you, I got to tell you the truth, right? So we got offered that Return to, weren't even calling it Return to Santa Monica. We were just calling it a re-records record, right? Okay. And they wanted a few covers on it and stuff. And they gave me enough money, and I went to Sound City, famous studio in LA where Fleetwood Mac was recorded, Nevermind was recorded. And I went to the gal there, Sandy, who's wonderful. Her dad owns the studio, and she was running it. And she goes, I don't have anything booked in March. I go, I'll book out all of March for $20,000, which is like way less than what it normally would have been. And she said, okay. And so I recorded not just that record, I recorded our record, Invisible Stars. So I recorded 2 records while we were there that month. And that's the reason I took the re-record thing. I didn't really want to re-record those songs. My heart wasn't into it. You know why? Because I never did demos. Mm-hmm. When I record a song, I want to record it. I want it to have a life of its own. And that's it, right there. I want it to come out fresh, and I don't ever want to record it again. So I did that, but I did that as a means to an end. And the means to the end was to have money to record a brand new record, which we did.
I think that's fascinating either way to hear kind of the process of how you got to that goal, which I think goes back to how driven you've always been to accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish in this business.
Yeah.
You know, talking about your songwriting style, obviously it's always been so deeply personal and introspective. When you're writing songs like that, are you taking into consideration how people might relate to it, or is it just kind of you in that moment getting your feelings out and then it's out in the ether and what happens happens?
A little bit of both. I mean, it starts like the latter, where it's just me. I mean, I think all really good creative work comes from a selfish place. You're trying to express something that you can't express in words. And once you accomplish that, then you put it out into the ether, as you said, into the world. But yeah, once I finish it, I do wonder how people are going to react to it. You know, I've got an ego. I've like anybody else.
Right.
You know, and I've got low self-esteem like most artists, so I worry about what people think. To a point, I do, and then to another point, it's like, you know what? Everybody go to hell.
I love that. And this tour that you're on with Marcy Playground and Jimmie's Chicken Shack, obviously people in this area are super excited about it, with Jimmie's Chicken Shack being very proudly from Maryland. And this whole tour kind of feels like 90s in a bottle, which I love. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between you and the other bands on this bill? Because I'm sure you have at least some history with the other bands and you've crossed paths in the past, correct?
Oh, man, I got history with these guys. Me and Jimmie could tell you stories of curl your toes that you'll never hear, ever hear. But, yeah, we toured back in the day, and I don't think the three of us ever toured together, but I toured with Marcy Playground several times over my career. Same thing with Jimmie. Jimmie and I wrote songs for one of his records, and we hung out. He'd come to Portland, we'd hang out. So we were friends, and me and John from Marcy Playground are friends. And I know those guys toured together back in the day, too. So this was cool having the three of us. But, you know, when you talk about 90s in the bottle, you know, I started a tour back in 2012 called the Summerland Tour.
Yes.
And that was all 90s. And that was kind of like anticipating the 90s revival. I guess I was 10 years too early.
Either way, I think you've accomplished that to kind of bring that. I don't like using the word nostalgia because I feel like sometimes it has a little bit of a negative connotation, but very much that, like, that feel that people really care about the music that came out of this time, and you're very much a part of that.
I agree with you about nostalgia, but I also think a certain level of nostalgia is healthy and good because it's connecting you now with these songs that bring back all these memories and all these things that happen from a different time. And let's be honest, memory tends to put a nice haze on things, even the bad things, right?
That's 100% true. Absolutely. I have one last thing that I want to talk to you about.
Please.
Obviously, Baltimore is very excited about the show coming to Powerplant Live on October 12th. I'm wondering, through all the years of your touring, if you have any special memories or anything that kind of sticks out, maybe a particular venue or something like that from any of the times that you've passed through Baltimore in the past.
Absolutely. There was a place in the 90s that looked like a big tiki village. Jimmie would know. But we played that, and that was just like, everything was like tiki and wicker. It was a trip, and we played that. And I think Jimmie played that with us back, it must have been 97, 98.
Okay.
Something like that. And that was amazing. Dude, man, the Rams had playing, every time I come to Baltimore, I go get crabs. and that was a big deal for me to do that. And just the culture, just the Maryland culture was just, I love it. I love the accent. I love the people. I'm stoked to be coming back to Powerplant Live. We played there in 2016, I believe. Yeah, it's going to be exciting coming back.
It's amazing, and I love hearing you name check Rams Head because they just recently announced that they're going to be closing their doors, which is a giant bummer because that was kind of like the mecca of live music when I was growing up as a kid, and it's right in that Powerplant area. So we're very happy to have you back in Powerplant at least.
Thanks, man, and don't forget Hammerjacks. And I know they rebuilt it, but back in the day, that was the punk rock club, was Hammerjacks, and then after that, the Rams Head. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of our audience that very much still clings to those Hammerjacks memories for sure.
Yeah, good times.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Art Alexakis from Everclear coming to Powerplant Live on October 12th with Marcy Playground and Jimmie's Chicken Shack. I'll be there. I can't wait. Hopefully I'll get to talk to you there on site. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, man, so good to talk to you. Great questions, and hope I see you there. Come up, say hi if you can.